Добрый день, мы ждем еще одного спикера, но я думаю, что начнем.
Good afternoon. There is one more speaker who is going to join us on the stage any moment now. So we will start. I'm happy to welcome you here. We have a plenary session that starts Exporting New Realities from Globalization to De-globalization. And I would like to introduce our wonderful speakers. Today we have here Anna Kuzmenko, Deputy Head of the Department of Investment and Industrial Policy of the City of Moscow. Artur Galiullin, Deputy Director of the Department of International Cooperation and Licensing in Foreign Trade from the Ministry of Trade and from the Ministry of Industry and Trade of the Russian Federation. And we're awaiting this person, Andrey Sukharev. He's on his way. Deputy Director of Department for International Cooperation, Development and Exports of Agricultural Products from the Ministry of Agriculture of Russia, Maxim Kobin, Vice President of Russian Export Center, and Dmitry Cheltsov, Deputy CEO and GR Director of Association of European Business. And he made it here when the logistics were complicated. Mikhail Khomich, Deputy Head of the Government of Udmurtia. All of us know that the pandemic was a black swan for all of us, and we had to change our supplies chains, those supply producers that had growth and those who faced declines. So we now are in a new reality, and we are facing a different world. And we'll be talking about challenges that exporters face, what support measures help them to overcome those challenges, what new opportunities they have, and what growth points are out there, and which ones are to be discovered. First of all, you'll have many insights. I'm talking about speakers, and you'll be actively asking questions. So QR code will be on the screen now. So we will do it again later. So the idea is, using this QR code, you can share your questions via the QR code. I'll get them and I will read them to the speakers. So not to go around the audience with a microphone. So everything has been digitalized. So this is the way we do it. And let's begin. Since we are in Moscow and Red Square is just next door, we would like to talk about Moscow industry. So let's watch a video about this.
Анна, вам будет первый вопрос.
Anna, the first question I will put to you. Every time I hear about some tests of our electronic transformers in Quebec, or if there is a conversation about some other high-tech products, I understand that over the last 10 years or even less, Moscow industry has changed so much, and their perception in Russia and abroad has also changed. So what does it look like today? How it has dealt with the pandemic, and how support measures for export stimulate its development? Hello, I would like to begin by remembering that yesterday it was an important day, an important celebration. And not only our president's birthday that you may have thought about, but I'm talking about our professional holiday, the Day of Moscow's Industry. So congratulations to my colleagues with this wonderful day. And today I'll be talking about the potential of Moscow's industry and its current achievements and challenges and opportunities for Moscow industry. Undoubtedly, Moscow's industry is one of the foundations of the city's economy. It's one of the foundations of the well-being of Muscovites, and Moscow city government to develop Moscow's industry and to support it perceives it as a priority in its activities. For that reason, many support measures we have implemented for our producers. I'm talking about tax breaks, property support, various subsidies and grants. Sometimes it can be non-property related or non-financial types of support. It can be support with projects, with consulting, when you need to just to learn about what you may be doing, what has a chance for development. And of course, we do a lot of work to localize new manufacturing in the city of Moscow. We look for investors who are ready to invest in new production site to develop the infrastructure and to upgrade existing manufacturing facilities in the city. We actively practice mechanisms of public-private partnerships in the city of Moscow that helps us to attract private investments to develop our projects. For example, this year, 48 contracts, full life cycles contracts were signed. 32 concession agreements were signed as well. We actively develop our new program for employment and job creation. 8 agreements have been signed in the framework of that program. And this year, so besides the financial projects, we also launched an interesting project called Moscow Tech School. It's geared towards training highly qualified people and improve competencies of engineers in line with the demands of companies. We started a first training track on communications technologies, and now we are preparing. It's at the final stage in several areas. We have some other training flows. Thanks to properly organized investments in highly qualified personnel, cities, companies can offer to the market not only their innovative products, but also they constantly implement new technologies in their processes. According to our information, 75% of Moscow's producers use digital solutions actively when they make their products, and they plan to develop them further. I can cite an example. We have a group of companies, Inform Technica, that produce communication equipment and IT telephony. So they provided a comprehensive solution, having developed a corporate messenger with very simple settings. So it's used as an app with secured communications channels, and it was very much in demand against the background of those challenges that the pandemic brought, because we saw a spike in demand for online events, and also in doing business not in the office but outside of the office, and also how to organize production processes in that manner. So maybe that was a coincidence, or maybe not, but that was a very fitting product in that situation. And if we talk about technologies, I can definitely mention a decarbonization agenda among companies. This is a new challenge for us. This is a new task that we have. I think many of you are aware of the measures taken by the EU in terms of carbon regulation, which is applicable not only EU countries but also to those who export to EU countries. So today we'll not be focusing on whether it's good or bad, but it's a given. It's a requirement of our leading importers. And we will surely work on making sure that our industry is more environmentally friendly and our producers are competitive once those requirements come into force to reduce the carbon footprint. Let me come back to the topic that will be discussed multiple times today, and it has been discussed widely over the last year and a half. I'm talking about the pandemic. It has been a challenge for all of us, and industrial companies were also impacted. At the same time, the totality of measures and the ability of our producers to quickly adapt to their processes, restructure them, helped not only to maintain the turnover, but we also see that exports are growing in monetary terms and also in terms of physical volumes. I'm talking about the goods delivered abroad. At the same time, during the pandemic, producers needed not only targeted or one-off support, but they needed comprehensive measures because they had to transform their business in a big way. So what is the key to success for Moscow companies? Of course, we have support measures, so we give them a chance to think about what they can export to external markets, but we also have a subordinate organization which is called Gazprom's Export Center that focuses on helping companies expanding their presence in external markets and also to accessing new markets for the first time. And Gazprom's activities include three areas. So the first step is preliminary step, pre-buyers program. When you study the company itself, its readiness to export to external markets, it's an analysis of their products, analysis of target markets. Are there any barriers? What are the particularities there, specifics? And also work to overcome these barriers. This is a preparatory stage, so we organize a second step after that, so buyers program, as we call it. So it's geared towards providing, ensuring presence of our goods in external markets by organizing business missions, exhibitions and shows that our producers visit. It's impossible to bring your products and say, okay, let's go ahead, let's sell it, let's export it. Understandably, business mission or an exhibition is the tip of this iceberg. But a lot of preparatory work is needed to find potential buyers, to verify their status, to organize the process, to make sure that the product can be presented in the best light possible, and also preparing materials for that market to make sure the target audience finds the goods they need. Also preparation for future negotiations related to all the technical aspects and also language particularities. So it's a set of pre-selling events, and as a result you have negotiations with your potential buyers. But because we're focused not on the process but on results, so we don't stop there, and we provide support for producers after that until they sign an export contract, or even when they actually ship their products following that contract. I can give you a recent case when one of our Moscow producers was delivering on an export contract their goods, and they got stuck at a Cuban port. So that was during the global lockdown. And so we intervened with Moscow. We started talking to the Moscow's producer, and they were able to avoid penalties, and they delivered their products on time to the right destination. Besides supporting them in accessing international markets, during the pandemic, Moscow businesses received a lot of support related to extraordinary measures, not standard measures. We had to make those decisions, having analyzed the economic situation, measures to overcome those difficulties during the pandemic, during the global lockdown. So we provided a lot of financial support for companies, grants, subsidies, various preferences. So I think we did a good job, because last year the volumes of products produced by industrial companies in Moscow grew by 12%. While in Russia the numbers were down. I think it was quite successful. We invested in our companies, and our companies were able to quickly transform their processes.
So they avoid ruining their business. The positive dynamics is still seen this year. Over the first 8 months 2021, the volume of industrial production grew by 24% compared to the same period last year. Also, we see that food industry grew by 28%, which is a very good sign. The same information is available there in terms of export volumes. Our organization, Mosprom, reports that over the 7 months of 2021, non-oil and gas, non-energetic products export was increased by 32% compared to last year, which is 1.5% time higher than 2019. So we grew to $17 billion. The driver of such growth became export of industrial products, $15 billion, and also $2 billion made for non-oil and gas industry. All those sectors are growing. So industrial sector grew by 37%, and agricultural sector grew by 4%. To sum up, I would like to mention the topic of today's meeting: export in new realities, from globalization to de-globalization. And in line with that, I would like to make a joke. So from globalization to de-globalization there's only one step. So it just reflects a very well-known proverb. I'm afraid of destroying those fragile chains, but still, the only thing that we can do is keep working, and I suggest that today and in the nearest future, we make only steps towards our partners, and only in that way we will keep growing. Thank you so much. Your results are pretty impressive when you measure growth in 2 digits. It's just great. I would like to ask Artur, how did pandemic impact national projects implementation, and what types of support do you bring in order to achieve our goals? Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Thank you very much for inviting me at such a high-profile event. So our ministry pays special attention to export growth. I am the director of a project called International Cooperation and Licensing in the field of foreign trade. So this direction is very important. That's why we pay special attention to it, despite pandemic. So we are in the green area according to the stats on all major industries, given that gold was taken out of the stats, and also despite volatility in terms of commodity markets on specific products. So the actual volume of export over the 8-month period was $5 billion, and biggest amount out of this makes up for Moscow exporters. Also, it is worth mentioning that there is a presidential decree, and according to this decree, we need to achieve 70% of export. And here we are talking about 3 major federal projects: industrial export, agricultural export, and support program. Our projects have a decent support from got a decent financial support, so you could see those numbers. And currently, we are implementing a number of different measures in order to support our exporters, including, and with their help, we've managed to even exceed our plan and to stay in a positive area. So these are our traditional measures of support, including corporate programs, competition increase, grants for logistics, when companies can compensate up to 80% of their logistics expenditures. Also, they can book this money for next year. So, and for next year, we see 20 billion rubles that are planned for such grants. Also, this grant is provided for intellectual property, and also for preferential crediting, and for some other programs. Also, exporters have a vast number of tools to take part in different international events, including trade fairs, exhibitions. So those events are organized by Russian Export Center, or if you travel abroad, you can compensate your travel expenditures as well. It is worth mentioning that that any exporter can ask for this help. So now we are launching new support measures, especially grants for product certification. The selection has just ended, and we see that this measure is in high demand. This helps us to consolidate our efforts, and applications can be submitted up to November the 24th. Also, grants for servicing and also they can actually use a buyback And as far as the certification is concerned, we're helping with this too. Also, we have trade representatives, trade missions, and we are implementing a strategic project with Egypt, a Russian industrial zone. And I would like to use this occasion in order to invite all of you to this zone, because it is being developed very intensively. We are just planning the future land development, and next year you will be able to start deploying your facilities. Egypt will become a country partner. This was announced at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. That's why we pay special attention to it. Given the entire world, we have 55 trade mission offices. They provide support for Russian exporters, including informational support, project activities, and also we receive applications or inquiries from every single company, and then we give them relative support. So we have created a single export aid program. So these are our agencies, including regional bodies, Russian Export Center, regional export support centers like Mosprom in Moscow, and also we have a well-distributed chain of our trade mission offices in abroad. In total, our measures are put into a kind of life cycle. Some of them can be applied at early stages during preparation, during your entry in international market, and then it just goes down to the after the sales support. At the end of my speech, I would like to say that companies who go to Moscow Export Center get very decent measures of support, including buyers search, help with marketplaces. We can even help you promoting your products in duty-free zones. So, which means this is something new, and it's very interesting in terms of the fact that companies think it's very difficult to go to duty free, but actually we make it possible. Our common goal is not just to increase growth as part of statistics, but also would like to make this activity, this exporting activity, as a mass activity. We want to see more companies, and we want to make everything possible to help our exporting companies to sell more their products abroad, and we are doing our best. Thank you. Thank you. I think that a lot of new opportunities appear and become available to exporters. It's quite interesting, and as far as I got, I'm not an exporter, but I think that trade mission has become a very good helper, and they really help to cope with some business problems, like problems with shipments and so on and so forth. And I think that in general it's much more easier to be an exporter right now. Yeah, we really struggle for each exporter. Well, that's great. So apart from industry, but from industrial sector, agricultural sector is growing too. That is why I would like to give the floor to Andrey. And Andrey, tell me please, how support measures help to develop agricultural sector given the crisis we are in? Because in order to start exporting your products, you need to be compliant with the specific requirements. Can you please tell us about it? Good afternoon, dear colleagues. So it's all about special procedures, special requirements. So I can tell you that Moscow, it's not a coincidence, is the biggest exporter of agricultural products in Russia. So yeah, it's It's mainly because of statistics, but it's all about transit and seed export. But nonetheless, even the processing industry is under good development. As it was said before, we have a goal to increase non-oil and gas export. So this year we show positive dynamics, given a very good pricing conjuncture on external markets, and this is being used by all our companies. By 2024 we need to reach $37 billion. But again, these numbers should never make us relaxed, because we really need to increase our growth, to increase volumes of export. So we're talking not just about prices, we are talking about volumes as well when it comes to products with the high added value. At the same time, in terms of our federal project, we are ready to provide this kind of support at all stages of a life cycle. And you see that the volume of financing almost equal to the planned export indicator. Also, we provide those supports for the entire life cycle of exporting, starting from products preparation and ongoing maintenance. And during my presentation, I will just skip a few slides, because in the context of Moscow enterprises, we have some specific requirements like amelioration, subsidying in remote industrial areas, but these are our tools. Just like in the industrial sector, these tools are in high demand by business. First is the mechanism of granting capital expenditures to create and upgrading enterprises in the area of deep processing of oil yielding crops. We can compensate up to 20% at the same time, and the prerequisite is to show some growth of 5% from the export volume. So the mechanism is quite simple. There are certain requirements towards technical volumes of the production of the produce, but we are getting some applications, and we are hoping that from 2022 the number of such enterprises will only increase. Another measure is supporting oil yielding crops. Maybe it's not very relevant to Moscow, that's why let's move on. So next is preferential crediting. This tool is very helpful, and it allows you to provide a decent interest rate for short-term crediting. We see that this measure is very much used by business communities, and we provide even more support in 2021 than in 2020. Starting from next year, in order to simplify the selection process and the application procedure, we will move all of these mechanisms to a digital environment. We will use a single window approach. Also, we adapt and add something to this instrument in order to address our business's demands and needs. And next year we will launch a direction which is called trade financing, that will include crediting, factoring, granting, and this will allow you to provide a full set of financial services to our businesses. Preferential leasing is a new program. This allows you to compensate up to 45% for your equipment in terms of the first leasing payment. The financing will start next year, but we have already started selecting companies that will be able to use this program. All biggest leasing companies take part in this program. And in order to use this support tool, agricultural companies should just come over to a leasing company with the equipment manufacturer, and then they will just structure their payments according to this model. Together with that, we have two demonstration events, which is the Golden Autumn. It takes part in the Patriot Park. It's our annual event where we present samples of produce, equipment, and where we have some business events. And the second event is taking place in Export Center, Agroprom Marsh. And there you can see some food industry equipment. So it's a very interesting event, very popular, and I think that this tool is provided to companies, so you can come over to see, to check some information about the companies, to understand what equipment they can provide you with, and of course you can agree on a certain discount. Of course, it is required that this equipment is made in Russia, and also you can benefit for when you buy some other type of equipment. So agricultural sector produce promotion to international markets. With this measure, we provide demonstration and tasting pavilions abroad. So we have 4 pavilions to be opened in China, in Shanghai, in Vietnam, and in United Arab Emirates. The 4th pavilion is about to be opened in Egypt this year. In those regions, companies can show their products, they can sell their products, they can sign contracts, and we are hoping that this promotion tool will be popular too, and we are hoping that our exporters will expand their geography. So international market exporters can compensate of up to 90% to register their certificates abroad. And despite the fact that certificates are not very expensive, still companies can compensate up to 90% for this process. And starting from 2022, this grant will be provided in a digital way by using the single window platform, so it will be easier and more accessible. Also, it's worth mentioning that our volumes of financing will grow next year.
And one of the most popular support measures is compensation of logistical costs, where 25% is reimbursed. We had a lot of demand current in this year. We had some additional limit increases to provide more support from 3 to 3.7 billion rubles this year. We also had some restrictions on products, socially important products, for instance, until the year. They will not be subsidized until the end of the year. We also provide subsidies via Russian export center. It's easy to get them. You just need to confirm that the product was exported across the border so the company can use it. And next year we also plan to increase volumes of providing this support measure. And in conclusion, for all participants of this conference, we have ambitious plans. In fact, we should consolidate our efforts at the federal level, on regional levels. I would like to thank the Moscow city government, because they always are in constructive dialogue with us. Also, the business community, we have vertical institutions to support exports, starting with the Russian Export Center and its regional chapters. Companies may get all necessary consultations at any level. And we also run federal projects, and we are open to new ideas and projects. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andrey. We just transitioned from Moscow to the federal level. We discuss industry, agriculture, and Maxim is your structure of Russian Export Center has data on many exporters. I guess you have some idea about the trends that we see in global trade, and you can tell us which support measures help Russian exporters to effectively overcome negative trends and to use positive trends to their benefit. Thank you very much for that, Irina, for this segue. Colleagues already shared a lot of things. I would like to thank the organizers and companies that are exporting already and companies that would like to become exporters. I would like to discuss what global markets have to offer these days. It's easier to find business ideas in the country, and external markets oftentimes for us are confusing, misunderstood. Why access them if I can sell my products here and I have demand for my products? And what will happen tomorrow? What if a foreign producer comes here and their products will be twice as cheap? So in reality, you should be ready to be competitive, not only domestically, but also internationally. So this is a challenge for all of you, because part of our agenda was about how we went through the pandemic, how the COVID crisis impacted us. Oh, I have this slide. So we see global trade, we see trade volumes were down in 2019, and we see also trends in 2020. So after every crisis, economy recovers, and companies generally have learned to live through those cycles because there's understanding what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, who they need to contact with any issues, and to get the answers or to get support measures that they need. On this slide, you can also see some stats, Bern Union stats. In any crisis, risks go up, and contracts are harder to be signed because companies mistrust each other. They're not sure if payments will be made, if goods will be delivered, and so on and so forth, if we talk about commercial activities. But same happens to the banks that process payments and provide ensure settlements, guarantees, and they look at the risks because risks are higher. So during crisis times, especially initially, if you look at the graph, the volumes of insured exports compared to total trade. So that was within the range of from 16 to 20. That was from 16 to 20 trillion American dollars, and then we have a curve that shows that absorbed risks by banks banks that were supporting international trades, and also so during the crisis that really goes up. We see that in 2020 the share is 13.6. If we talk about stable situations, so that's 10 to 11 or 12%. The next graph shows the amount of insurance payments compared to delinquent payments. So if some take those risks and those risks materialize, so then insurance payments are made, and so also claimed or reported losses compared to exposure. So we see that during crisis times, when companies take those risks, we see that the highest indicator was in 2020. Now I would like to talk about our group. Colleagues already said that we jointly provide some support measures. Russian Export Center is an agent to provide those support measures, and we launched such a product in a format one-stop shop for exporters. This is to get access to government services. So the advantage is that you can get the service faster. So if you, for instance, you participate in an international exhibition, to get that decision, you provide a package of documents. It used to be all on hard copies. Now if you're registered with this one-stop shop, you provide documents electronically, or if some of the documents are part of government services portal, so they're accessible through that on the company. In terms of our support architecture, our group also includes Exim Bank and XR, so they absorb those risks that I mentioned. There's no graph here, but our group provided support for $19.3 billion. That was in 2020, and there is a stable demand for covering that risk. So which is quite good, because companies look for some tools, they look for markets, they want to access new markets too. In our structure, we have export school that has a large number of programs to train specialists. Just a small example. Sibur Holding is quite well known, and they have run many investment programs for different products with highly value-added products as well. But to export each product individually or in-house is difficult. But in the country, they have a lot of partners and dealers, so they were trained through the export school. So target markets were presented to them, and so they increased the number of companies that started buying their products through their dealers, international companies, I mean. So they established stable relations with them. And they started to earn more. It became more effective. So I think that's a very good case and a good example for others. Support of the Russian Export Center for Moscow companies. Statistics say and it's the structure support. It's nice to know that we a lot of agent support, non-financial support, which accounts for 85%, and export support in the amount of $1.3 billion, which is quite a lot for us. Just for you to better understand, we do not support all the things that are exported. Raw material exports, it's $150 billion altogether. So 10 to 13% gets supported, as I stated before. In terms of support measures, we provide a lot of education, we provide a lot of consulting, business matching, exhibition, information support, a lot of online services. You can download an export contract, draft, etc. So for SMEs or for developing companies, it's very good. Very helpful. This is the architecture by industries, and we see this year that there is significant growth for companies in the Moscow region. Numbers are given here. So also agricultural products are in great demand, and there are clear reasons for that. COVID had this impact. It's not only that we transitioned to platforms to order products with home delivery, but also around the world, when you have a crisis agriculture is not going down, it's growing because people keep eating, thank goodness. And there are new technologies that help to deliver that product for exports. So there was a serious discussion on e-commerce platforms, and so that area was developing a lot with the participation of Russian Post and other Russian companies to deliver those products to China, to Europe. And it's nice to know that a large share in that segment was agricultural products. And many other products also follow the same channels. Some examples are given here of companies that have worked with us. And if we talk about insurance support of exports, over 30 countries in the world, so insurance of accounts receivable, when there is a 90-day delay in payments, if they are not get paid in 90 days, then XR, our export agency of the Russian Federation, so they make that payment for the company. And also they do not violate currency regulations in that way either. So that means there'll be no problems for the CEO of the company. So other non-agricultural example, if you talk about Moscow, out of the volume of 1.3 billion, 512 million were used for agriculture product support. Of course, those capacities are not located in the city of Moscow, but still we should know there's active synergy between Moscow and other regions. Otherwise, those volumes would not have been achieved. So with regard to e-platforms, I wanted to say that there's synergy there. So we're not substituting with Moskva, but we are complementary with Moskprom. We may work in different markets in different countries. We have our own representative office network, and there's Ministry of Industry and Trade, and also Ministry of Agriculture that also promote in that way. Yeah, we have agricultural attaches, that institution now in place. We also work on the same platform. We understand where companies need to get support. So large volumes of analytical data is available to better know which markets, which players exist, and you can get even specific contact info. So we have those e-platforms that we use, over 30 marketplaces, eBay, Amazon, that you all know, Alibaba of China. So they're very active, all of them. And that's where we see that agricultural products see a lot of demand, because our products are considered to be environmentally friendly. So that's another positive factor to promote Russian products internationally. Just a few words about the measures that I have mostly described. So not to repeat myself, because I talked about stores, I talked about exhibitions. There are companies with whom we supported this year. IT companies, also movie companies, those that export services. They're one of the key service exporters. So we launched 2 programs to support them for adaptation and certification of their products to meet requirements of external markets. So there's demand for it. We will continue to do it. And with our cinematographic program, if Ian Press already mentioned that, we in St. Petersburg, they shoot a movie. One of the largest Indian companies from Bollywood came. So it has impact on the economy. It creates jobs in Russia. which is a positive, and also it helps to export. We just wait for the time when borders will be reopened. And so XR and Ross Exim Bank. So XR to cover commercial risks and 90%, and political risks up to 95%, including sanctions. So to mitigate those risks, Ross Exim Bank, this is a specialized bank to support exporters, funding of AR, guaranteed operations, and special services funding for products delivered to international buyers or legal entities or banks. So with we have ratings at a high level with Moody's and others. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Questions will be in the end. Thank you so much, Maxim. I'm very happy that Dmitry is here with us, who represents Association of European Business, because it's a different perspective on how new reality looks, what it looks like in international activities. So Dmitry, my question is about trends, challenges, and how do you characterize this new reality? What we should bear in mind? Thank you very much. For me, it's a great honor to represent the Association of European Business. I would like to thank the organizers and the government of Moscow for this opportunity. Just a few words about the organization. I represent the Association of European Business. Was established in 1995 in Moscow, and currently it has chapters in St. Petersburg and in Krasnodar. It should be noted the Association of European Business is the main representative of international investors in the Russian Federation. It represents over 500 companies, and the main goal of the association is to strengthen economic ties between the business circles of EU and Russia, and also to promote positive image of the Russian Federation in other countries. And the driving force of the association, its committees, its task force, working groups, of which we have over 60. One of the main objectives for us is to activate constructive dialogue aimed at shaping and developing a rational regulatory environment, improving investment attractiveness of the Russian Federation, and also strengthening the foundation of international cooperation. When we moving on to my topic, I should note that the pandemic of the coronavirus impacted global trade and economy, international tourism, and in many countries the first response to that was harsh restrictions on movements, on travel, and oftentimes it was introduced chaotically, haphazardly, and that had a negative impact on the normal way of life. And
given that borders were closed, this led to delays. The situation was quite critical at the checkpoints, and this of course impacted airlines traffic, and of course this led to a global disruption of shipments around the globe. And unfortunately, we saw how vulnerable they are, and of course it has a very big impact on such products as medical items, food, vehicles, electronics, and even biomaterials. In limitations and restrictions that were introduced also led to the situation that companies couldn't work in a normal mode. Most of companies faced in this situation shortage of people, of man labor, and of course they suffered from big financial losses. At the same time, I would like to mention role of car transport in this situation when sea and air transportation was not possible. Land transport still worked, and hopefully we made everything possible in order to remove any limitations from this type of transport. At the same time, digital transformation on transport has developed thanks or due to physical contacts between cargo companies and company representatives, and of course this has been regulated very intensively. It's worth mentioning that land transport, in the background of these negative effects, allowed it to survive many participants of different processes, because everything that we see in this room or in our apartments was carried in the cargo compartment of a vehicle. Given the disruption of global supply chains, it's need to be mentioned that, of course, everyone faced a situation when a major role was played by the state of industrial sector. Especially, it's very applicable to China. Let's say 90% of different components are produced in China and in India. Now we witness the shortage of semiconductors and other electronic components, which makes it impossible to produce electronics. Also, it impacts automobile industry and some other verticals too. Of course, we need to raise the question of the sustainability of supply chains. But here we need to talk about cooperation between the European Union countries and Russia. European countries are main investors into the Russian economy, and many companies have localized their production in Russia, which is quite good. At the same time, they do not just ensure demand of the internal market, but at the same time they export their produce abroad. For example, Nokian Tires that has their own production in Russia ensures 100% Russian market demands. It produces more than 16 million tires per year. And out of this production volume, more than 50% is exported abroad to more than 40 countries of the world. More than 2 million tires is sent to the United States. I would like to emphasize that the issue of globalization and de-globalization is discussed very widely in recent times, and sometimes it's a subject of arguments and disputes, because on one hand, production localization and program implementation in Russia play a big role. I have to say that import replacement program goal is to create competitive national product, and of course this cannot be denied. At the same time, I need to underscore that the global character of the economy in general doesn't exclude the necessity of international cooperation, trade exchange, because different components, spare parts and special products with no doubts come from different countries. So going back to automobile industry, in order to build one Volvo car, more than 10 million systems and components are used, and these components are made in 150 countries around the world. This type of dependencies and just shows that we need support. And this type of cooperation makes it more effective to build cars. And this is how the competition stays. Also, I must say that in line with that, we need to use diverse tools, but economy should be open and it should be interested in finding the most effective ways of supply chains, organization, and of course we need to take into account growth and the fast proliferation of digital technologies across different industries. That is why experience that we got during the pandemic, especially when it comes to efficiency and vulnerability of global supply chains, need to be taken into account today, and we need to pay special attention to it in future, because this process is pretty complicated and we cannot solve this issue alone. So there is a proverb that goes, a way to success, a path to success is always under construction. Of course, it is better to treat it pragmatically, because anyway, any path becomes better if we build it together. That is why I encourage you to start cooperating with us. Programs that are being discussed today, especially support programs, Russian export, Moscow export, deserve special attention, and I think that they can be further assessed and they can promote further cooperation. Thank you. Thank you, Dmitry. Before we proceed with the diversification of supply chains and new opportunities and inter-regional cooperation, I would like to remind you that you can ask your questions after the discussion, and in order to do so, please scan the QR code and then post your question. So if you didn't have time to scan it last time, you now have an opportunity to do it again. And now I would like to give the floor to Anna. I know that during the pandemic, pandemic had a good impact on our microelectronics producers when everyone needed to diversify supply chains. Most of our producers found a new point of growth that wasn't available for them earlier or wasn't perceived them as such. But I know that for Russian manufacturers, there was a big problem of finding components, and the project and inter-regional cooperation was a great help. So can you tell us a little bit more about finding new markets and new suppliers? Yeah, thank you for your question indeed. Really, the pandemic and the lockdown showed how fragile we are. And that's why we have put together a very decent program with a serious prospects of development and growth. Global supply chains between many countries that existed before in a traditional model showed the risk. For instance, we all know that China supplies a big amount of different electronic components. It's 85% out of total components. So when in China the production stopped and industrial factories and plants were, unlike Moscow, were really stopped, we faced a situation when many manufacturers of electronics, of automobile industry, just had to reduce their production capacities. They had to stop their production. or they had to slow it down given that they just didn't have enough spare parts and components. But as we know, any barriers can open new opportunities. That's why we always like to face such challenges. Moscow Department of the International of IT Technology started to think how this situation can be overcome. How can we localize supply chains on a regional level, or at least on a federal level, which would become a very positive opportunity to reduce the cost of production, to overcome logistics problems, and also it would help us to create new cooperational projects on the level of the city or on the level of the country. The outcomes were pretty interesting, and I can tell you that we accumulate information. This information was very helpful, and it can be also helpful for other manufacturers, because companies now know what companies do. They can check their quality. On the other hand, we accumulate demands of other countries. What produce is in high demand, what products are required in other countries, and we know now that turnkey programs are in a very high demand. So it's not just separate or standalone spare parts and components, it's a complete ended system that companies are looking for. We have carried out an analysis, and upon this analysis we have proposed to create supply chains among Russian manufacturers. The very first pilot project appeared when we were getting ready for the industrial trade fair in a prom that took part in Uzbekistan, April 2021. We understood that Uzbekistan is an agricultural country. It develops greenhouse production of agriculture crops. We understand that technologies in this area are not very well represented and are not developed enough. That is why we thought we have decided to create a cooperation between Moscow companies and Uzbek companies. And those companies were supposed to create lighting and heating equipment for greenhouses. This cooperation included lithium and ion batteries, cables manufacturers, temperature sensors manufacturers, UPS systems manufacturers, automated management system, and lighting equipment producers. So all these companies could barely enter a foreign market because, for example, if you produce cables, I don't think that they even planned to sell their products abroad, but when it comes to a turnkey solution, we got a very interesting offer. We brought it to Uzbekistan to Inaprom exhibition, and now we are on our way to negotiate over selling this complex to our colleagues from Uzbekistan. That is why I think it's a very positive use case how we've managed to make this high quality cooperation, how we've managed to build a high quality product, how we embraced Moscow companies, and how we took their different components in order to provide a turnkey project. I think this is a very serious area for development and further investments. I believe that supply chains can be built not only inside the region but among regions too, and this is a very good way of cooperating that will bring us even better results, and it will help us on our way towards future growth. I think this direction will expand international markets produces capabilities. This type of cooperation will help you finding new partners. This will strengthen your business, and you will get a chance to be included into the, not just into the list of exporters, but you will be able to take part in different industrial and infrastructural projects implemented not only in Moscow but in Russia in general, and then you will be able to go abroad. And at the end of the day, I think this will allow to improve the status of Moscow production quality. Thank you so much. That was a very interesting case, and it's a very good point of growth. Maxim, you as a government, what kind of points of growth did you create for Russian companies? What can you tell us about these changes? So first I would like to say a few words about Udmurtia. I'm very happy to see Udmurtia people at the Export Forum, and thank you very much for your brilliant presentations, and thank you for inviting me here. Special credits go to Ministry of Industry and Trade of the Russian Federation. So this information was really helpful, so thank you for that. Yeah, so we know each other and we don't need to hide anything. But look, I can tell you the following. 5 years ago, Udmurtia didn't know anything about export because it's one of the closest, the most isolated region of Russia. You know that there were some secret cities back in the Soviet era, and we also had so-called secret or isolated regions, and Udmurtia was one of them. So you know that Kalashnikov is produced in Udmurtia, but very similar factories are located there too. So without going for that transparency and openness, just drop it. We are okay, but in recent years, Mr. Bruchalov's team is there to help our companies. Mr. Bruchalov is our governor, and I can tell you that being an entrepreneur is very patriotic. But when you start exporting your products, you compete with the best, and Udmurtia has something to be proud of. And everyone has iPhone, and I can tell you that some components in iPhone are produced in Udmurtia. Also, we deliver knife sharpeners to the United States, and I can tell you that in some countries these knife sharpeners are considered the best, and it's sold everywhere. Swimwear from Udmurtia are sold for national team Chile and Argentina and New Zealand. So it looks like it's just a list of weird words like swimwear, Udmurtia, New Zealand, but this is true. The strategy that has been adopted by the head of region to be an entrepreneur is very patriotic, and it's not just trivial. Well, I don't believe that many people will call being an entrepreneur a patriotic thing, because you need to pay taxes and you need to carry additional burdens. So on the latest St. Petersburg Economic Forum, Udmurtia was called the best entrepreneurial region by the Russian president.
So that was an emotional introduction now of how we develop and support exports. I would like to thank the colleagues for actively participating in that. And Export Center must hate us because we participate in all the programs. A shout out to Veronica. We were one of the first regions that started to totally accelerate all entrepreneurs in general. because we realized that we don't have to teach them to export. We cannot do that, but we got the best exporters. We had a first accelerator with Plat, you know, that producer of Russian toothpaste. So we also helped drag some of our companies to international markets, including help them with the Chinese market. Then we ran several accelerators, and we are one of the few regions that can run that can run its own educational program, and I would like to thank the Russian Export Center for your great support. So the first strategy is total education. Over 600 companies have been through education for Moscow. That's not impressive, but for Udmurtia it's a lot. And I don't care if they like the education or not, but they're in the same chat now, and they help each other to resolve those issues. So that's entrepreneurial community. So that's a very important outcome, and some people did not expect it from start. Secondly, marketplaces. Colleagues already mentioned that. From Ministry of Industry and Trade and also from Export Center, we also launched the first accelerator for marketplaces. We got together eBay, Ozone, Wildberries. So in terms of eBay registrations, we were region number 3 in the country, following Moscow and Petersburg, which was somewhat surprising. And we told them, go ahead, sell, because exporting is complicated. I can be emotional about that, but you know, you cannot just do it just like that, you know. But marketplace is a different story. We compensate some of the expenses. If you have a personal profile on marketplace, we reimburse some of those costs, and they started doing that. And we understand if honey from a Glinsky district of Mordovia travels to Switzerland, then those things are possible, and many things are possible. So they should use those marketplaces. And being a deputy head of the governance responsible for exports, it's not only about numbers, but we want more and more entrepreneurs to understand that export is plausible. And some people did not believe in that, but that was my conscious choice because I'm responsible in this area. We really put a lot in representative offices, trade representative offices. They play a great role, and they have grown a lot. So from the status like, leave us alone, we are just government servants, officials doing our job. But we have those that really do some extraordinary things, and people say, we want to deliver this from Russia. And so they use Telegram chats for communications, and we see how our trade representative offices change. They do change a lot. So without advertising my friends in several countries, we see a very positive trend. So we develop those activities, and trade representative offices generated dozens of contracts for Udmurtia. Next thing, business missions. So all the people from the governor to sellers, they are involved. We do it in Bitrix. But not only in different to other countries, but also to other regions. We say, Udmurtia is coming to you. We're looking for buyers in your region. The only region that wrote to us first, because it was Moscow. So colleagues from Mosprom, a shout out to you. So that was the first initiative. And that was very pleasant, very nice for us. We will have a high-quality business mission for you because we have many industrial companies, and Moscow has a lot of things to offer as well. So for sure, we will find some overlap. So total education of exporters, marketplaces. Thirdly, targeted work with trade representative offices, business missions not only to other countries, but also to other Russia's regions. And lastly, Udmurtia has some benefits. So individual support for large exporters. We are a region where we have some very big companies, and it's like concierge service, like a taxi cab service. So we provided individual assistance. It's one of our best practices, and it's really profitable. Also, in engagement with exports, we ran social advertisement. If you drive across Udmurtia, you're invited to do that. You will see, and you will be able to tell it that you are in Udmurtia when you're there. So we have those billboards with some unique cases on them, on exports. So it's like in the three billboards, I delivered my honey to Switzerland or something else. And the last billboard says, so we can do it for you, and we'll do it in a month. You'll be exporting. So it's all over the place in Udmurtia, and we are attracting new exporters, and we'll see how it goes. So great, a lot of thanks to Moscow colleagues and to Mosprom, and thank you for the invitation. Thank you very much. We were so infused with your energy. We started a little late, so we will finish a little late. So Dmitry Yalov will come online. Deputy head of the Leningrad region. He will tell us about growth points and trends in Leningrad region. Hopefully it will be technically possible. Hello, good afternoon, colleagues. I will not be telling you about all things that I could because Mikhail already shared. Support measures and regional approaches are somewhat similar, and we are learning as leaders from each other. I will mention two key trends that require attention. One of them has emerged over the last year, basically readjusting our support tools. So the first trend, which is also info story, it's about de-globalization. Even in 6 months ago, when specifics and before the specifics came out on trans-border regulation, many took it somewhat philosophically, talking about carbon footprint. But now we take it very seriously, and we are confident not only the EU but other major trading partners will start to implement various measures of carbon regulation. And products with a major carbon footprint, including hydrocarbon energy sources, their competitiveness will be lower, restricted, and there are risks to lose your share of the market. Understandably, we do count that our partners will recognize, and nuclear energy is one of the green energy sources. So far, it has not happened, and so generation of green energy is something like 1% of capacity when we talk about wind and solar. It's not enough to deliver products with green certificates, so it is a major challenge. We have talks with many investors to build wind parks using CSA programs and also retail market. So it's not only about energy. There are multiple solutions on top of that. With the strategy, with the Moscow Center for Strategic Development, we signed an agreement with them, and by the end of the year, we will develop a roadmap to decarbonize our regional economy. And that is directly about exports, because a few years ago, in a few years, that products that do not meet requirements of our partners, they'll be restricted. Another point about exports and improving labor productivity. We have some exporters from among SMEs, and we see they have some infrastructural restrictions that they face, especially now when the exchange rate of the national currency is good for exporters, and we help help key exporters to improve their labor productivity. A simple case: we have Novaya Vysota company, one of the leaders in the Russian market. It has 30% of the Russian market. and they started to actively deliver their products abroad. And only thanks to the project that was implemented, they were able to boost their production, and they were able to get some export contracts. And we help key exporters to expand. So besides soft support measures and working on promoting products in international markets, we also help those confident exporters. We help them to produce more things that are in demand in global markets. Thank you for your attention. So those are two aspects that I wanted to mention. Thank you so much. Colleagues, unfortunately, we're out of time. I saw some questions. Probably you'll be able to address them to Mosprom or Russian Export Center, and they will give you all the details. They'll tell you about, what support measures can be provided to logistics and when the contracts are canceled. I would like to thank the speakers. That was very informative, very motivating, and very exciting. And now you want to become an exporter. Thank you so much. So if people want to become exporters now, so we attained our goal. Thank you so much.